I am Marcus James Dixon with Gold Derby, and we would like to welcome the hair and makeup team from Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, Christine Blundell, makeup and hair designer, Lesa Warrener, makeup and hair supervisor, and Neal Scanlan, animatronic and special makeup effects supervisor. Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Marcus.
Well, first things first, I would love to ask each of you, how big of a fan were you of the original Beetlejuice from 1988? And how excited were you to join this new project? Christine, let's start with you.
Oh God, I hate starting first. I was a massive fan. I mean, I think everybody that I know in my family and my friends are massive fans of Tim Burton, full stop. And getting the opportunity to sort of recreate something that was so iconic, it was literally like a dream job being sort of pushed my way, really. So yes, massive fan of the first one as well.
And Lesa, how about you?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's our era, thankfully. Yeah, fantastic. It was a pleasure.
And for you, Neal?
Yeah, well, of course, it'd be the same thing, really. I mean, and for us especially, I think it's being, involved essentially with what we would call practical effects and rather than digital effects, making a movie with Tim, and this movie in particular, was just, was just like, it's the perfect ingredient. When you see the original, it was done that way, and to pay homage to that a second time around that was an opportunity not to miss. Yeah.
So, Christine, let's talk about Michael Keaton's look. How close to the original Beetlejuice did you keep things? Did you change anything that we may not have just noticed on the first viewing?
Well, it's kind of interesting that because obviously, we had to keep him as close as near damn it to the original because he's in the afterlife. So, he's dead. But what we try to do is we try to sort of make him, obviously the original look was so iconic and, everybody knows it. And I think, first off, we're now looking at 30 years further down the line, with a note from Tim at the start sort of saying, guys, we don't want to use any sort of CGI if we don't have to. So, I mean, luckily Michael turned up. He's in such good shape, Michael. I mean, he really is like sort of, he looks like he's still in his 40s. I mean, he looks incredible, super fit. And basically, once we sort of like started recreating the makeup, I was sort of Chloe Meddins, who was working with us, who was looking after him. She was sort of, we was doing practices beforehand, before Michael arrived. And both her and myself are sort of saying it'd be really nice to kind of add a little bit of our stamp to it, so we tried to make him a little bit more decomposed, a little bit more, I suppose, a little bit more texturized with the makeup. We definitely played about with these wigs a lot more. And we had, so obviously we had him alive as well, so we had the opportunity to make him an alive Beetlejuice in the flashback sequence. So we kind of sort of like had the original as our basic guideline, and we kind of sort of added onto it, but it was more about texturizing and little things of, Tim was very keen to kind of keep it as close as possible, so we kind of just really made like the mold a little bit more, like it was sort of a bit more three-dimensional and things. And obviously the hands and the nails and things like that. I mean, it was so intricate, his makeup. It was down to a fine art in the end. I mean, Chloe got it down to so quick, partly because Michael doesn't sit still for very long. But she really did sort of like get it down to a record time of about 40 minutes from start to finish in the end, which is good.
And Christine, he has this nose piece, doesn't he?
And he has a little nose piece on as well, yes, that Neal and his gang made up for us. It's just a tiny little hook on the nose. And yeah, once that's on, he's just sort of like coloured in, and the rest is sort of like paint work, and the wig goes on. And then he's got false teeth in. We had false teeth made for him with Chris Lyons. And yes, and then it was the nails, and that was him.
Did he have any trouble speaking with the false teeth then?
No, I mean, he's a master of his craft, Michael. I mean, they were made specifically for him. We had a cast. I think, Neal, didn't you get one of your guys? We had to recast his teeth. I'm sure that you did that with your guys over in LA, didn't you? And sent it over to Chris Lyon, so that we could get them duplicated here. And then we had 3 sets made, because Michael turned up really sort of like late in the proceedings, really. He sort of turned up a couple of days, if not a day, before we shot on him. So by the time that he arrived, we had like 3 sets of teeth for him to try, of different variations of decayingness. And if I remember rightly, we was all in the truck just sort of trying on teeth and seeing which ones were most comfortable for him. And, you know, along after that, he had a spare pair that he can take home. Whenever we get teeth made for actors, we usually get a spare pair so that they can take them home and just do their rehearsals or lines, whatever, the night before, so they've got them with them. Sort of cover all of those areas, really.
And Lesa, one of my favorite new characters is Dolores, played by Monica Bellucci, and she is in full makeup from head to toe. Her character literally sews her body parts together. What was the secret to making that look so real?
Practice. I think there was a lot of practice, wasn't there, beforehand with Neal also. I think with everybody, we got the actors so late in the day that we practiced on Saskia, didn't we, Neal?
Yeah,
a lot of the.
Yeah, we pretty well went through.
And she was a body double for Monica, and I think we just practiced with people beforehand. But she actually had her own personal hair and makeup come in and do her actually on the day. But Christina designed the hair and had some beautiful wigs made for her.
I think I'm sorry, I want to jump in there a little bit, just because we were so involved in the setup look of the Dolores character, along with Jen and Megan, and obviously Neal, who is Neal's team. So at the very start of it, Neal, I mean, this is so hard to describe this film, because there's so many crossovers between Neal's team and my team. And basically, when I first went and met Neal, we were just, we kind of realized, very early on, that there was no kind of, we would all just dive in and get on. And when we was doing a test with the Dolores character, Neal had put together a very incredible little sort of video of how we could piece her together. And then we kind of just all put our heads together, and we were just like, okay, well, maybe we should, with the whole makeup look, I kind of really wanted to make her all running down her face. And we sort of like played around with all of that, and everything needed to be a little bit kind of like manky. You can't do manky on Monica Bellucci when she actually turns up, because it's impossible to make her look anything other than beautiful. And the more you run her makeup, the more beautiful she gets. But all of the stitching and everything came together. We tested it, but it was actually Neal's team that applied it every morning, it was Jen and Megan that applied it every morning, wasn't it, Neal? So they'd be there first thing in the morning, and then once we sort of like showed Monica's team how we wanted the makeup to look, they'd kind of follow that through, and then we had the wigs made for her and everything.
I think what's really interesting about, as you say, Christine, was that the way that Dolores looks came directly from a kind of version of how Dolores could piece herself back together using real people. So in other words, again, rather than it being a digital effect, we choreographed nearly 5 girls that were all playing different limb parts. So one girl would play the left arm, another girl would play the right hand, the right leg, left leg, etc. And that choreography kind of let us know where the parts were that Dolores had been chopped up. So we now knew that her right leg had been chopped halfway up the thigh, but her left leg had been chopped below the knee or whatever. And that absolutely drove the design of the makeup and where the scars were. And that was really an aesthetic thing as much as a practical thing. Obviously we wanted her to look beautiful, even dismembered. Her body part should look beautiful. And I think that's what comes across in that scene, is that she's able to sort of put her face back together. Yeah, even without a part of her face there, she still looks pretty stunning and engaging. So yeah, it was a really wholesome, wasn't it? Really cross department. I think
it was very there was a lot of crossovers. I do remember so many times. Sorry, Neal. You can't, because Neal, you know, would obviously put together a little show and tell, and then he'd sort of like go off to Tim and get notes, and then come back and say, no, he wants the staple, he wants more staples, he wants more this, he wants more, and then we'd sort of start again. But it was, I mean, it was, honestly, I've never laughed so much on a film.
Brilliant.
On this film.
Yeah.
You guys have such a fun job. I'm just listening to you talk about body
This job
parts
was
and
particularly fun.
Yeah. One of my favorite characters from the original and this one is Delia, played by Catherine O'Hara, and she has the iconic red wig and the makeup. Who can talk about her look and how you try to, you know, recreate it from the past, but also do your own thing?
Well, I'm going to start, and then I'm going to move over to Lesa, because Lesa looked after her on a day-to-day basis. But when Catherine arrived, she literally arrived a couple of days beforehand, and we didn't really know. I'd managed to get a wig wrap made for her, so I had the fittings made for her, and I got my makeup artist Alex Rouse to make up 5 wigs of a light copper tone, and we had all of those made bespoke for Catherine. And then when she arrived, we had literally a bus of different coloured wigs, different variations of red, and we basically was just with her and Tim and just said, what do you like? And she was like, the brightest you can get, please. So we kind of got the brightest colour, like that really mad red t-shirt. And she's just like, yeah, I want that colour. So we then gave the wigs to our colorist, who then went off and coloured them all overnight. And then we cut them, between Lesa and I, we sort of cut them and styled them. And then Lesa spent a couple of days with Catherine sort of going over her makeup. Now, I'm going to pass you over to Lesa now to tell you about the laughs that they had, because she's a very funny woman. And I used to chuckle.
She was an absolute who. But it really was, actually, it was the day before we did a pre-shoot. So it was the gallery. So, and I'm not sure if you can really tell by the gallery scene how many looks she had. Now, this is the day before we started shooting. She arrived. So actually, apart from her wigs that she wore on a day-to-day basis, Chris had already got out a ton of wigs that she would be wearing for the show. And this was the day before we started the pre-shoot, as it were. But she was an absolute joy. And really, I mean, Tim came in and they chose, exactly as Chrissy said, they chose what colour wig they wanted and what style. And then just, yeah, I think Catherine guided me through it. And yeah, if she didn't run her makeup off once a day, it just wasn't Catherine. We had so many laughs. She was so fun.
Neal, what could you tell us was about one of your maybe biggest challenges in working on the animatronics and maybe consulting with the makeup and hair teams? I'm thinking immediately of the shrunken head characters. There were so many this time around.
Yeah, yeah, the shrinkers were I mean, in so many ways, I have to give great tribute to Colleen Atwood and her ability as a costume designer to make those characters work so well, because obviously you've got a very small head on top of someone else's head, and you've got this strange sort of proportionality between the top of the shoulders and where the arms are. And we did a few very early tests again for Tim, where we had them riding on bicycles and doing all kinds of things, and they were really fun. But to make them really, I think, film worthy, there were 2 things there. One was the costume was very very beautifully designed for them, and secondly, I think that the amount of animatronics that we were able to put into the heads was impressive. I mean, they had a lot of movement. The movement we used was very subtle. Tim likes it to be very, very subtle, and there's a lot of movement and a lot of expression in the eyes. So they were great, and obviously there were so many of them on set. So each one of them had a performer looking after them, bringing them to life. But I think some of this that sort of go by so quickly were big challenges. I think when Beetlejuice spills his guts, I mean, that is a completely practical effect. And if you look closely, you can see that that's Michael leaning on a board. We made this whole kind of almost canon affair where Michael leant forward, his head, his shoulders, and his arms are obviously his own. But everything beyond that, the legs, the body, the torso, all of that is a complete dummy. And in the back of this cannon is all of these guts that we pull out using hundreds of monofilaments in the moment, including copious amounts of obnoxious liquid and things like that as well. So it's, you know, those the eyes, even the blow up suit where Michael's suit expands. You know, again, it's not a digital effect; it's a practical suit, and Michael loved it. The fact that he was on wires and he could lift up and act within this suit. So there were so many of those things, but they all tied in, with so many other aspects. The mummy, for instance, was, she was a brilliant, costume that we made. As far as trying to make a mummy look like a mummy, but it was also beautiful makeup as well that really helped make that work. So it's there's so many of those combinations right across the board, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, Halloween is right around the corner. How honored will you guys be when you see people dressed up as your characters that you helped create walking the streets, just everyday people dressed up as, Beetlejuice and the shrunken heads, and you must feel kind of honored in a way.
I think it would be fun to see, that's for sure. I'd be a bit scared to open my door, I think, on Halloween. I mean, going back to what Neal was just saying, I remember Tim was very, adamant that what we could do to camera, we'd do to camera. And I do remember once sort of like having a conversation with Neal, about the eye popping things when he looks up at the sun, Neal. And yes. I remember sort of like literally calling Neal and just going, is there something about can we just make a mask with poppy eyes that we can just put on at last minute? And that literally was, Neal and his team, he just pulled that together so fast. By the afternoon I had it, I think, and we was popping it on Michael, because I remember it being brought to me and putting it on me. I've got a picture of me putting it on first of all and laughing at it, because it was just this sort of like these bulgy eye things. And it was just so brilliant because we could just literally just put it on Michael under his wig, put his wig back on, and we was like doing it on final checks. It's like the stuff that Neal's team managed to do straight to camera was literally incredible. It was mind blowing, a lot of it. I know we was all doing it together, but it really was. Tim's he's a very, I hate that word organic, but he really does. You'll be doing something and he'll just sort of say, oh, can the little baby puppet that you made, it's like, we're doing a baby Beetlejuice. Oh, Chris, do the hair. And you'd be just like sort of, does this look like the right Beetlejuice makeup? And we'd be comparing it to what we're doing and say, yeah, we believe that's his baby. And having these bizarre conversations, and then it'd be just like, oh, the baby's just eaten Winona's, it's just eaten Lydia's leg. Can you just do a quick, cut on his leg? And I was sort of like trying to mop up, we're still trying to mop up all of the goo that Neal had thrown out from the pregnant belly spurt. And, Lesa was sort of down at Winona's feet trying to put, bites on her feet, whilst I'm sort of like trying to get her face and wig back to normal, It was hysterical.
Thing was, as you say, was in the moment. It's just like sort of Winona's stitches in her mouth.
They were great. They worked so well.
Just a little cut, isn't it? We just put them in her mouth too, and she responds and does a moment. But to your point about people, sort of doing that, I think, really, hopefully, what we all did as a team, make up ourselves, to a large extent, the costume as well, is that, it's getting Tim. I think, is it a compliment to see people walking down the street in the stuff? I don't know how much credit we can really take for that. I think that credit goes to Tim Burton. Our credit is that we kind of got Tim enough for people to for him to be able to sort of really enjoy that process and really take advantage of the fact that we could respond so quickly. And so, in the moment, it made for a really dynamic and a really exciting, exhilarating and exhausting, prep and shoot, to be honest. I think we all were utterly drained by the end of it, but creatively drained. The energy is what's draining you, not stress of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all so much for chatting with us today. I was just reminded that the original Beetlejuice did win the Oscar for Best Makeup. So fingers crossed for all of you. We will be rooting for you come Academy Awards time, and we'll see you around. Have a great day, okay?
Yeah,
thank you
very much.